Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak on our Conservative government's bill to scrap the Long-Gun Registry. Over the course of the debate, we have heard from many of my honourable colleagues from both sides of the House. I'm glad to be able to add my voice and the voice of my constituents to this important debate today for Bill C-19, the Ending the Long-Gun Registry Act. Mr. Speaker, I consider Palliser, which I have the greatest privilege to represent, a very special riding. It includes Moose Jaw, parts of Regina, as well as 11 rural municipalities. This law targets residents of my riding who are law-abiding gun owners, while doing nothing to prevent gun crime in urban areas. Ending the Long Gun Registry has been a long-standing commitment of this government. It has been part of our promise to Canadians that we would stand up for law-abiding families and deliver law and order measures that actually work. That means measures that actually stop crime. That means measures that hold criminals accountable. That means measures that demonstrate real results to keep our communities safe. Certainly, along with a strong economy, these are the priorities of Canadian families. They told us that loud and clear when our government was given a strong mandate on May 2nd, we intend to deliver on our commitment. Let me emphasize this point again, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we support laws and measures that actually work to stop crimes and deliver results. We are against burdening law-abiding citizens with unnecessary, time-consuming paperwork that serves no purpose and costs the taxpayer. We don't believe in treating hunters, rural residents, or outdoor enthusiasts with unfounded suspicion. And we also don't want to waste taxpayers' money on programs that don't accomplish the intended objective. Mr. Speaker, for years the registry has been a burden on law-abiding hunters and rural residents. For years, law-abiding long gun owners have been forced to comply with useless government regulations. The real question is, has it worked? Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid the answer to the question is no. The original intention, creating the Long Gun Registry, was to prevent gun crimes. But when you look at the evidence, the facts are clear. The Long Gun Registry does not prevent crime. The Long Gun Registry does not protect frontline police officers, and the Long Gun Registry does not keep guns out of the hands of criminals. Registered long guns account for less than 2% of the homicides committed with a firearm and less than one-third of the crimes committed with a firearm. Let me repeat that. Less than 2% of homicides and less than one-third of all crimes committed use long guns. And it is important to note that in the very rare case where someone intends to commit a crime using a registered long gun, the fact that it's registered doesn't stop that individual. The Long Gun Registry has no preventive mechanisms. It is also important to be clear which firearms we're speaking about today. We're talking about ending the failed and ineffective Long Gun Registry. We are not talking about handguns. In fact, handguns account for two-thirds of firearms-related violence since 1998. The bill we are discussing has nothing to do with the regulation and registration of handguns. What about the criminals who actually use the firearms? Mr. Speaker, criminals don't register their guns and generally use handguns, not long guns, so the Long Gun Registry does nothing to hold criminals accountable. Imagine a criminal or someone with intent to commit a crime standing in line, paying a fee to register a long gun. That scenario simply won't happen. Criminals don't bother complying with government regulations. So if criminals are not held accountable, who really bears the burden of the Long Gun Registry? The answer to that is law-abiding long gun owners bear the burden. They acquire them legally and operate them responsibly. But they're the people who are saddled with the paperwork and the registration fees. The Long Gun Registry also does not do anything to ensure firearm safety use. The Long Gun Registry does nothing to encourage responsible use of firearms. This is a useless burden, Mr. Speaker, that does nothing to prevent gun crime, nor encourage responsible use of firearms. This is a burden that signals to Canadians that they are regarded with suspicion, regarded as potential criminals, just because they happen to own a legal object, a common item that is part of lifestyle for many Canadians and common to many communities all across Canada. I also want to briefly mention the cost, Mr. Speaker. The Long-Gun Registry was supposed to cost $2 million. Ladies and gentlemen, the cost is now up to over $2 billion. That's billion with a B. And we see that the registry does not deter or prevent gun crime. Hard-working Canadians also bear the burden of this pointless registry. So let's scrap the registry. Let's stop wasting money. Let's stop stigmatizing farmers, outdoor enthusiasts, and rural residents, and let's stop targeting the wrong people. Let's target the real criminals instead. In fact, our Conservative government has been taking measures to target the real criminals already. We have already passed some important legislation on gun crime in previous parliaments. We enacted mandatory jail time for drive-by shooting and tougher sentences and bail conditions for serious gun crime. These are important steps that target real criminals. We cracked down on reckless street racing. Street racing is a crime and it should be recognized that way. Again, we are creating measures that hold criminals accountable and leave law-abiding Canadians to live their lives in safety and security. We are proud of our actions. Our government is taking action to keep families safe with our recently introduced Safe Streets and Communities Act. This act includes preventing serious criminals from serving their sentences in their living room. We are taking steps to ensure that criminals face real consequences for their wrongdoing. The Safe Street and Communities Act includes tougher penalties for those who will sell drugs to our kids, and it prevents serious criminals and those convicted of sexual assault from ever being able to receive a pardon in Canada. Serious crimes deserve a long-lasting consequence. Mr. Speaker, let's move away from past mistakes by scrapping this registry that puts the burden on the wrong people. Mr. Speaker, I suggest that we move forward to deliver results for Canadians. Let's move forward and build on progressive legislation that we've made in keeping our communities safe over the past few years. Let's target criminals and help stop real crime. On behalf of the residents of my riding, I strongly support Bill C-19 that will put an end to the Long-Gun Registry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Brome-Missisquoi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'argument des conservateurs pour s'opposer au transfert des données est que ce serait une violation du droit à la vie privée. La commissaire à la protection de la vie privée, Mme Jennifer Stoddard, ne voit aucune violation. En fait, elle maintient que les données peuvent être partagées entre le gouvernement et les provinces afin d'aider les provinces à faire appliquer leurs lois. Pas besoin d'imposer des coûts. Tout ce qui est nécessaire, c'est un accord entre le gouvernement fédéral et le Québec et les provinces qui le désirent. Quand le gouvernement actuel va-t-il agir afin de conclure des ententes avec le Québec et les provinces qui le désirent? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Palliser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to my honourable colleague's question, our government has been very straightforward, very crystal clear. We want to scrap that registry. That means scrapping all of the bells and whistles that hang on to it, all the paper trails, all of those things. They are submitted by people in a private kind of information gathering object. We don't feel that we can pass that on to anybody. We feel if they want to, they being the provinces, want their own gun registry, then so be it. But we're scrapping ours.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to follow up on that question to the member. Is that common sense would dictate that to scrap, completely scrap, hit the delete button, destroy the information, and not provide any of it whatsoever to the province of Quebec, who is looking at it, is going to cost the Quebec taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. Those very same millions and millions of dollars could have been so much better spent on issues such as community policing, healthcare, nurses, doctors, so many other things. Does the member not see at least the benefit to allowing Quebec and supporting Quebec in being able to retain a long-gun registry, because that's what the government of Quebec would like to do? Why destroy the information?
Honourable member for Palliser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess part of the answer to that question is the reliability of the data. It has not been updated, and it would be unreliable data. Talking with police chiefs, they suggest to their men when they go to domestic disputes, go as if there's guns in the homes they're knocking on the doors, because the registry is simply not up to date. I think the other point that needs to be raised, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that when I fill out a form for one level of government, I don't automatically say all levels of government should have access to the information on that form, and that's what we're saying here, and I don't believe there's any legalese to support that position.
Comments? The Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and actually to my colleague from Palliser. I want to thank him for his great presentation, and I think there's a misunderstanding I need some clarification on, because the registry is actually the data, and if you don't get rid of the data, then I suspect you don't get rid of the registry. I don't think it's too deep a thought to think about, particularly when the Auditor General has said the information is not reliable. It isn't information that should be accurate. I'm wondering if the member has a comment to that question.
Honourable Member for Palliser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, as I said earlier, in talking with a number of police chiefs across Canada, they have said off the record that the registry is not usable for their men because it simply has not been kept up, and so therefore it's a piece of equipment that has no use, really.
Some comments? The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was taken aback to find that when I made a point earlier in this debate regarding archivists, honourable members on the opposite side found it amusing. I want to pursue that with the honourable member for Palliser, because it is actually current federal law that materials produced through the legislative process remain in our archives. Privacy is protected. This is the normal course of affairs, and it is really disturbing to people in the field of archivists and historians to see data destroyed. Names wouldn't be used, but the historical data is valuable. Does this government realize it's changing public policy in a fundamental way?
The Honourable Member for Palliser, a short response, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would share with the member that the data is suspect in terms of accuracy. The data has not been kept up. Again, it's data that belongs to the federal government, not the provincial governments. If the federal government choose not to share that data, then they're certainly within their rights.